Hello everyone, it is Briximus Prime back for another one of these tier list top 20 figures of 2023 videos. Now, this one's going to be kind of a weird one because the majority of this list is McFarlane Toys figures, but I don't have a full 22 McFarlane Toys figures, so I threw in a couple other action figures that I do collect from this year that I did throw in just so I had a full 22, so it's going to be kind of a weird list, but anyway, let's just get right on into it by starting with the non-McFarlane Toys, and then we'll get into the McFarlane Toys ones. Now, just a quick disclaimer, the Gunslinger Spawn figure will not be in this list because technically I did buy this figure last year in 2021, or in 2021, and so he's not going to be able to count on this list, even though I did technically review him this year, and he is a figure that I really, really do like, but again, because he was the only figure I had last year, there was no McFarlane Toys top whatever of last year, and he's not going to be able to end up on this one this year, and if he did end up on this list, he would have been more around like the 5 or the 6 range, so just letting you know, I do have this figure and I did review him, but he's not technically on this list because I got him last year. Anyway, now moving on to the list. So starting off the list at number 22, we have the Spartan Collection Jazzwares Master Chief. This is the one that came with the Energy Blade, and it came with that mini version of the Cortana, not actually Cortana hologram figure. And honestly, I do love the figure, it's just I didn't love it as much as other figures that were on this list, and that's the only reason it's down here, at least for this weird pre-McFarlane Toys part of the video. And now getting into 21 and number 20, we have the Ghostbusters Plasma Series Peter Venkman and Winston Zedmore. Again, I like both of these figures, but they're basically exactly the same. That's why I kind of counted them as two separate parts in two separate numbers, but one part of the video. And overall, I think they're fine. It's just, again, just like the Jazzwares figure, this guy was just thrown in, or these guys were just thrown in just to fill up space. But I do like the figures, and I did still want to give them shout-outs. You could say these pre-figures are kind of like my honorable mentions. Now getting into number 19, we have the Mattel Masters of the Universe New Eternia Skeletor. Again, I love Skeletor a lot, and at least one of them had to go on this list. This was the only Skeletor I actually got from this year, and I do love him a lot, so he did deserve to go on the list, and I do love the figure, and again, he's just here to fill up space. Oh, and by the way, all these videos, all the reviews and videos that I reviewed all these figures in will be in the links in the description, as well as in my playlists and such. You can go and check them out there if you missed out on any of them. And now getting into number 18, we have the Bandai Gundam model kit, our RX-78-2 American type. I really like this model kit. It was a fun build, and I love this little model kit. It is a little rickety on some areas, but as you can see, I have definitely loved the idea of it being put together and how posable it is, and I would like to go in and customize it at some point. But for now, I do like him a lot, and I do want to make sure that he gets a shout out in this video. Now, this is an action figure that definitely deserves to get a shout out in this video because of how super popular, and it's now my #1 review on the whole channel, the Diamond Select Toys Iron Giant. I'm pretty sure this figure speaks for itself. I mean, it's the Iron Giant, everyone loves it. I really love this figure, and I love the light-up feature and everything about him, and I can kind of see why he was my most popular review that I've done this year, and I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it as well. And now let's get into the actual McFarlane Toys, starting with the Page Puncher's Batman. Now, honestly, case in point, you only bought this for the comic. I only bought this for the comic. This action figure is kind of a niche little thing. It's only good as a little desk toy, but besides that, you bought it for the comic. That's why it's at the bottom of the McFarlane Toys list. Moving on. Similar to the Page Puncher's Batman, I only bought this figure because I just needed like a couple more dollars left to add a free comic onto my McFarlane Toys package. And so I threw in this little All Might figure, and honestly, he's actually been a really nice little desk toy, and I'm glad he's there because I do like My Hero Academia and I do love his character. But again, he's just a 5 inches tall, and he's very, very stiff, not that much posability, and I only added him just so I could have like free shipping and have a little free comic book in my order. Anyway, moving on. Now, I'm not going to be one of those people that disses on this figure because of how it looks or whatever, because in full honesty, the Batman figure is a pretty decent figure in general. My main issue with it is not that, because I'd much rather go and buy the SH Figure Arts or some other high-end, like, Japanese-made version of this figure, but my main issue with this figure is the fact that you have to buy his motorcycle and like 2 other versions of the Batman in order to have a fully rounded Batman set. And even then, he doesn't come with a lot of the necessary accessories that he should have. So that's why he's put down so low on the list. Coming in at number 13, we have the McFarlane Toys Doom Eternal Ember Skin Doomslayer. Now, I do love the Doomslayer and I do love the Doom figures, but the Doom figures, the Doom guys, were not put very high on the list because, honestly, I think they're very stiff and not very posable. And the Ember Skin is my least favorite of the bunch, not just because of the posability, but he does have quite the lack of paint, and I really wish he had more bits of red and all that. I mentioned about it in the review. Again, go and check it out if you missed out on it, but overall, he's just not my favorite of all the Doom guys, even though he still is pretty cool. Anyway, moving on to number 12, we have the McFarlane Toys Doom Eternal Doomicorn. Now, the Doomicorn, it's the same opinion as the other one, as the Ember Skin. It's not my favorite, but the only reason this one is put above the Ember Skin is because it actually has a whole lot of color and a lot of stuff going on with it, where the Ember Skin seemed a little plain. Anyway, moving on to number 11. We have the Warhammer McFarlane Toys Orc Mega Knob. I like this figure. He's quite big. I did buy him on a discount, so that's why the price doesn't really affect any of his rating. But he is kind of stiff, and I do wish he had a little bit more posability. But a lot of the paint and molded sculpting does make up for a lot of it, though the backpack did take way too much force to get onto him, and my hand still hurts just thinking about it. But overall, I think he's fine. Again, I just liked other figures more than this one. Now finally getting into my top 10. First we have the Doom Eternal Doomslayer Phobos version. This is the one where he's in that bronze coloring. And sadly I wasn't able to get my hands on the classic green one because how expensive it is, but the bronze one here is a great alternative, and I love how it is, and it's definitely one that I keep coming back to play around with. Moving on to number 9, we have the Doom Eternal Gold Label Astro Skin, or White Armor Doomslayer. Now, I am a little bit biased toward this particular armor because this is the one that I used during my playthrough of Doom Eternal, so that's why I wanted to get this one. But I also appreciate that this was a Big Bad Toy Store exclusive. It's nice to see my favorite online store get an exclusive, and also I like that this guy came with the Crucible. Anyway, moving on to number 8. We have the Spawn Soul Crusher figure. This guy I got on a deep discount. He's normally like 25 bucks. I got him for $8. And honestly, if I bought this guy for 20 bucks, I would not have been disappointed. I really like how this guy turned out. He has a lot of painting and sculpting and a lot of great detail. And I didn't review this guy on the channel, but I do like him. It's just I don't really know a lot about this character. I've only read like a couple of comics with him in it. I mostly just needed someone for my Spawn to beat up, really. And now moving on to number 7, we have the Warhammer 40k Ultramarines Reaver, and I love the Reaver. This is one of my first Warhammer figures that I ever got, and I love the Ultramarines, and I don't really know too much about the Reaver. Like, I do know that it's an elite, Ultramarine, but he basically is different because the armor's a little more slimmed down and he has the skull face. I did do a review on this guy, and I do love the figure. It's just I really want to get some more Ultramarines, but this guy is so posable, and he's one of the more posable Space Marines, and so he ends up higher on this list because I do have a lot of fun with him. And now moving on to number 6, we have the My Hero Academia Powered Up Deku. This is the version of Deku where he's repainted with the pink lightning and everything, and he has a different head sculpt and everything. I like this particular version because I prefer Deku when he's the more action-packed superhero more than when he's the, crybaby like sometimes in the show, but I think this figure depicts him pretty well. My only complaint is I feel like some of the posability could have really been improved upon this guy, especially with how expressive some of his poses and some of the action that he does inside the show. And I feel like this figure really could have been a whole lot more posable, which is why this one, just like the Batman, feels more like a placeholder for me to eventually get like an amazing Yamaguchi or like a Revoltech one later on. Anyway, Moving on to number 5, Deku almost ended up in number 5, but I do like this figure a little bit more. It's the Warhammer Tyranids Gene Stealer. I like the Tyranids. Like, they're not my preferred enemy for the Warhammer, for the Space Marines to fight, but I do like the Tyranids, because I have played a couple of the games with them in it, so I am a little bit biased, but this figure definitely interprets the Tyranids very well, and I feel like this is one of the Warhammer figures that is very well worth the money, and also it's one of the most posable Warhammer figures I have ever handled, and for some reason, when they have more arms, they seem to be a whole lot more fun to play with. Moving on to number 4, we have the Warhammer 40k Blood Angels Primaris Lieutenant. This was another one of my earliest Warhammer figures I ever got, and I really love this guy. I keep coming back to him to play with him a lot, and I really love the way how he looks. I love all his extra bits of armor, and again, it's a gold label, so he's also like a rare, limited figure. And again, I love the sword accessory, and just some of the poses I've gotten him in are really nice. The only problem is, because he's a Space Marine, his posability is kind of stiff, so I don't really play with him as often as the next one on the list. Moving on to number 3, we have the Warhammer 40k Chaos Marine, which is one of my favorite figures ever from the Warhammer stuff that I've gotten so far. I know it sounds kind of like heresy, but I love this guy a lot, and the only reason this guy went above the Primaris Lieutenant is because I come back to this figure the most to play around with him out of all the Warhammer 40k figures that I have. And so I just really, really like him because I just keep coming back to him all the time to keep playing around with him. He is genuinely a really fun figure to play with. Anyway, now getting into number 2, I had a really hard time deciding the top 3. I kept swapping them around constantly, and I finally decided on the Commando Spawn from Mortal Kombat to be in number 2. I really like the Commando Spawn. It's probably my personal favorite look for Spawn, and I do love how he's got like all the guns and everything, and he's got that kind of bandana on his mouth, and just overall, I like Spawn, and this is definitely my definitive Spawn action figure for the character. But again, I really loved the Chaos Marine, this guy, and the one in first place so much that I had a hard time deciding which one would go where, and I think Spawn does deserve to go in my second place, because I do come back to play with him a lot. And then finally, coming at number 1, technically this is an older McFarlane Toys figure, but I did buy it and review it this year. This is the Doom Eternal Marauder. Again, I really love Doom, and it was the main thing that got me into McFarlane Toys, and this is one of those personal holy grail figures that I really wanted, was the Marauder from Doom Eternal. It's definitely the coolest enemy that has ever been in Doom, at least in my opinion. There are a lot of really great ones, but in my opinion, this is one that I personally just really love, and so as soon as I got the action figure, I instantly fell in love with it, and I actually like him more than the Doomslayers, because he's actually more posable, and he feels a little bit more like he has a whole lot more detail in paint, especially in like the skin and the axe, and again, he just feels a lot more fun to play with, and I probably come back to this figure to play with him the most out of anyone else that I've ever played with any of my McFarlane toys. So anyway, that is my number 1, and that is my list. So apologies again for this being kind of a weird, kind of formatted list, but I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you guys liked this list or whatever, give me a like, comment down below, subscribe for more tier lists and more, reviews, and again, be sure to check out all the reviews that I did that I mentioned about in this video, and I'll catch you guys next time.